up here and okay. So Jacima, if you can bring that up and let's see. Let's have Joshua, have you got a copy of that happening there? I'm wondering if he could read, Joshua could read this. Starting at, no, I was thinking of the email itself. Just there's one portion of the email. Let's see. Yeah, starting with second paragraph, Darwin is careful. Josh, are you out there in outer space?
I don't know if my connection's very good, unfortunately.
Okay. Why don't we have Tina, how about you?
I can't read it.
Okay. Bob Yeager. We go down the elderly, you know, right? Okay.
I would have to get my glasses.
No,
I
that's
think
okay.
I could
Let's
do it.
have Bob Yeager will do it. Yeah.
Darwin is careful to make it clear that is not the body, the mind, or the heart that goes on the spiritual journey to God, the soul, but consciousness itself, our awareness. And along this journey, the main work of our consciousness is to eventually withdraw its tentacles from being enmeshed in the body, mind, and heart, and come to focus itself solely on God. However, because of the trickster, Maya, the body, mind, and heart are continually dragging us into the prison of time and space, when we are really the timeless spirit. The mind is the greatest purveyor of time and space, but as our awareness moves into the deeper realm of the heart, we begin to experience some of the timelessness and spaciousness of the soul, God. This is achieved by our strenuous efforts of purifying the heart. This process is helped most profoundly by being open to Baba's grace. One of the greatest obstacles is our mind that keeps dragging our timeless spirit into time and space through such negative emotions as worry, greed, ambition, retaliation, and the myriad forms of wanting. Darwin gives the metaphor of a chess game in which we focus on moves that counteract the cunning moves of our ego, ultimately, as Darwin says, checkmating our false self.
Perfect. Yeah, that's it. I guess any questions on that? I mean, are there anything to say to that?
Well, I was just a tiny bit confused because earlier on in the paragraph, there's some, it sounds like, could I see the paragraph again, please? It sounds like the heart is actually one of the things that tricks us. But then later on, it's efforts of purifying the heart. So I don't know, it's kind of a double message. I didn't quite get it. Yeah, withdraw its tentacles from being enmeshed in the body, mind, and heart. So yeah, am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean, the heart has all of the better angels, but also it has greed and anger and impatience and retaliation. It has a lot of negative qualities in the heart as well. In other words, you can't just give the heart a blank check. You might find yourself heavily in debt.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But
remember, in one place, Baba does refer to this triad of ego, mind, heart, and I can't remember where it is, but that makes a little bit more sense now. Okay.
yeah, good. No, good question. Let's see. We've got Cindy James back on the
Here I am. I'm
starting
coming from,
lineup here.
I'm coming from Hawaii, so aloha, everybody.
Yeah, great to
That-
see you.
That statement about dragging our timeless spirit back into time and space, when I read your email, when that came out, Jeff, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I have, since I've read that, I know I've read that before in Effort and Grace, but it wasn't ready. I have felt that dragging me back, the timeless soul back into time and space to just be a fighter there. And I keep thinking of that phrase, to be fully human, but to know I'm not of it. Like to not drag my whole awareness into time and space to be here. And that those attributes are what drag me back in, whether it's worry, fear, resentment, whatever it is, wanting of any sort. And I've been having fun watching this wrestling match of my ego taking me out of my awareness of my timeless spirit into time and space to duke it out there. And I'm so grateful. I just wanted to share that. I think it's kind of fun when I don't take it so personally.
Yeah, no, it's because if we become aware of our body, if we leave the timeless spirit with our awareness and get connected to our body, then we are the body. And if our timeless spirit is kind of gets focused on thoughts, we are the mind. If it gets, we get tricked again and again. We get, it's one thing to watch this going on, but it's one thing to become the mind, become the body, become the mind. That's what Darwin is.
I think one of the interesting things or perspectives that I've been embracing more recently is when I started the path, I would almost get mad at the ego and the mind and this identification process. But then I've come to realize more recently that it's perfect as it is. I've been seeing NDEs of people who go into that state of timeless, spaceless, blissful oneness because they're either in their spirit body or one with source after they've died. And in a sense, it's very beautiful, but there's a lack of experience maturity that the soul cannot get when it actually knows what it is. So this process of sheathing itself, or the ignorance that comes about through the ego, the mind, and identifying yourself as this limited being in 3D time and space, I actually think the spiritually mature perspective, or like the most satisfying spiritual perspective that I've been embracing more recently, is the game is perfect as it is. And it's not the case that anyone is superior or inferior, but the game just has to be played for God to gain a richer understanding of himself. So I've not been fighting the ego or like hating it or censoring it, criticizing it. Even Baba mentions that the ego is a necessary development in the journey to consciousness, but rather I've been just seeing it as a vehicle that lets creation happen. And I've been at peace with that perspective more and more, rather than constantly waging this never-ending war, if that makes sense.
Yeah, excellent. No, really. Because the saying, what you resist persists.
Right.
Darwin, but Baba also used to talk about being relaxed at the innermost level, so that you witness all of this, but you don't get pulled into it. But you're fully aware of it, and because this is our field of loving. If we can put love into this drama, then we are actually not bound. That's the beautiful thing. But then if we put greed into it, we do get bound. That's the way it is. Okay, well, let's start out. Why don't we have Sam? Hari, do you have if Jaysima can put up the beginning, and maybe, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Shall I just read until Path or the start of the Divine Chess Game? Where do you want me to stop?
I know let's just read, go all the way through the Divine Chess Game as well.
Okay, sure. Purifying our hearts. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Matthew 5:8. Through a refining process, we each are being fashioned into a temple on earth, and this process begins with identifying ourselves as timeless spirit and knowing that the truth of this can manifest in our lives. The inner path consists of stepping stones toward truth, and we move at the level of the spirit. We move toward God, toward Meher Baba, toward reality within by discarding the false, for we have to discard the false in order to experience the truth. As we move in the spirit and more light comes in, we experience upliftment, timelessness, and bliss. Instead of struggling with negative things, we accentuate the positive, love God more and more, and long for pure love, pure truth. The path also involves trying to find God within, trying to feel the presence of God, to feel the divine love, divine grace, and divine beauty within. The way is open to each one of us, and eventually every one of us, Baba says, will take that path. The divine chess game. It takes a while to realize how close we are to the spiritual path and how easy it is for us to get underway on this inner path. I feel that it is not a question of following a doctrine or merely accepting a belief, but a matter of working through our own special cloud of sanskaric veils consisting of our thoughts, feelings, and desires. In other words, it is not working with something out there, but working inwardly to disentangle our consciousness. It involves an awareness of where our attention is placed or where our longing is. Fortunately, we do not have to go into the Colosseum with the lions as the early Christians did. However, we are facing something far worse, our own desire nature. Minimizing the desire-ridden ego requires paying attention to countless trivialities, noticing small efforts we can be making constantly. I like to think in terms of a divine chess game. This is not a doctrine or a system, but rather the idea of devising ways to counteract the false claims of the ego. This divine chess game is the game of ourselves, and the object of the game is the checkmating of our false self. This involves trying to change our sanskaric impressions and eventually eliminating them altogether. Just as figures move about a chessboard to counteract a tricky opponent, we are making moves to counteract the sanskaric tendencies that have held us back all along the way. In adapting ourselves to each new inner situation that comes up, we have to strategize and plan several moves ahead. After all, in the midst of battle is not a good time for one to start planning a strategy. Each of us learns to predict what sets off strong reactions in ourselves and develop strategies that best counteract the energy tied up in our own sanskaras. We have to be on our toes to know what to do in each situation. For example, wanting embodies a lot of energy, and we can redirect or sublimate the energy tied up in our desire sanskaras by turning it into a spiritual longing, perhaps simply by reading something inspirational. That would be an example of a chess move. Another counteracting chess move we can make is keeping in mind the fact that the world is merely illusion. Another one is thinking of self-effacement as something positive. Seemingly small inner moves like these mount up, and after a while, they add up to a dramatic redirection of our inner forces. The whole thing amounts to the clearing or purifying of the heart center.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anyone have any questions or want to speak to that?
Well, it sounds to me like this is what these are really good examples that Darwin gives, and it seems to me that what he's talking about here is when Meher Baba talks about thinking counter thoughts to fight without repressing negative thoughts and emotions that come up. One thinks counter thoughts. And these seem to be good examples of what those counter thoughts might be.
Yeah. In fact, it would be nice to hear, any examples that you folks have in your own life of how you could have gone one direction, but you decided to go with your better angels and go in another direction. That whole process of, instead of going out to the bar, you decide to go to a discourse meeting or something, you know what I mean? Head off a whole a whole raft of sanskaras. But go ahead.
I have different thoughts going on about this, but I think in infinite intelligence, I think this word is very appropriate here. Baba calls it upapag, which is eating creation. Your mind wants to continuously have a diet of creation, this idea, that desire, this one, whether it's foibles or strengths, right? Whether it's unhappiness or bliss, I'm sure. But and so Darwin's saying, become aware of this constant process of upapag, and then in your awareness of it, I think don't try to buy in, it's like, betting on a football team or something. Forget it, you're not going to win the gold at the end of the rainbow by betting on, just let it go and enjoy the game, whatever. But there's another image that comes to me for this. It's because Darwin is limited to writing this down on paper, but this is a very conscious, moving experience for all of us. And I used to love riding a bicycle. I mean, I rode a bicycle for 5 years every day, and winter, summer, no matter what. And I just love the thrill of the motion, the movement, the action. And all along, if you stop, if your feet aren't not on the ground, you're going to fall, right? So you don't stop. And that's, I think, the way kind of life throws things at you. But in the middle of riding a bike or, going through these different sanskaras, experiences, how do you remember, And for me, the only way that's truly effective is to remember Baba. For me, that's it's just the most tried and true way for me. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, Darwin talked a lot about momentum. You want to keep your momentum going because it's hard to start up again once you kind of get into an inertia. And the momentum is very, very valuable to the momentum of your spiritual fervor. Keep that going, keep that ignited. Otherwise, you'll fall off your bike, Anything else?
I can share an experience.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course, the three prayers and singing and Satchidananda, the chant, are just so useful to me when I find that my mind is engaging in setting up an argument to prove that I'm right in my head. Nobody's even here, like the past or the future, or the temporal now. And when I start to say the Master's Prayer and really feel it, and then if I'm like 3 lines in and I haven't paid attention, I'll go back and I'll start over again. And sometimes it could take me an hour to say the Master's Prayer for me to actually pay attention to it. But I always feel that it's like those atom bombs, like Baba is so present with me. And then the joy of it. I was in the water today. I mean, the waters here are glorious. And just saying, it didn't take me that long. In Hawaiian blue waters, I can pay attention to firmament and the depths and everywhere and all of that kind of stuff. It's a little bit easier. But the joy of saying those prayers while I do them when I'm struggling, but also then when I'm really just want to heighten the experience of being connected to God and the blessings of being a human. So for many different reasons, to chant or sing or to say Baba's name or to say the prayers. I went to sleep last week. A young man that I've loved since before he was born left this realm via overdose a week ago. And he and my 3rd child, we were both pregnant, and the mom called me right after she found out, wailing. And I was in it too, like just saying, no. I just talked to him on his birthday a week before that. And then I just thought, Cindy, put on your big girl panties. He's forever. And I heard Baba's words. It's somewhere in discourses, Baba says that like when you want someone you love to be in the body when they've left, it's selfish and ignorant. Like, why would you want them here when they're with God? And why don't you know that this just happens in the normal course? And once I started doing that and and then just listening to like You Alone Exist on a continuous loop. Or there was a Darwin Shaw talk I never heard before that was like a couple hours. It helped me move through feeling so far away and grieved, and to be able to connect with God and Baba and the young soul that's passed, not to involve him in this realm, but just to thank him and see him being united with Baba, and saying the prayers for his soul too as it transitions, because he was he suffered for a while.
Yeah,
Baba.
beautifully shared, really. Yeah. Yeah, that's anything else here, or shall we let's go on to the next? Oh,
I said it, yeah. Marcel, go ahead.
Oh, I'm realizing that Baba, I listen to my inner voice and I know that's Baba, usually my first thought. And then I realize I stub my toe, or I do this or I do that. And I say, well, I didn't pay attention to what Bob, let me think about this. Okay. I know that Baba, everything happens because we're in this situation because Baba puts us there. So I look at these things that happen as something that I have to look at in myself. And then I don't panic anymore. I just say, Baba, 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 Baba. I do that. And then I sing the 7 names of God. And then I just read, and I realize that all these things that, like, say I come across somebody and I didn't like what they did or whatever. And then I look at myself and I say, well, I've got to look at that in myself, because obviously we're like mirrors off. We're all God. We're all the same, but we're like react about each other. And I feel like right now I'm really fortunate to be in Myrtle Beach, and I'm seeing all these people that have been on Zoom, and I feel like together people are all kind of reuniting, like in groups of just like-minded people. And we've seen, it's like all our paths are crossing from all the different lifetimes that we've had right now. So I think it's just a wonderful time. And it was Earth Day, so that's a good thing too. I'll stop before I'm rambling.
okay. Yeah. There was a quote. It's too bad Mayor Prasad isn't here, but there's a quote where Baba says that he would see his lovers, 1,000 lovers in one place, something like that. And maybe Ronnie Greenstein knows, but and here the Zoom is kind of like that, but he would be able to see 1,000 lovers in one place. You recall something like that, Ronnie, from Baba's writings? Oh, we can't hear you.
Never mind. I was muted. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
No, as far as Baba seeing Baba lovers, he saw tens of thousands at these Sahabas, not the Darshan programs that he gave.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
No, this was like in the future. He would meet his lovers all in one place, kind of. And I don't know if he was referring to these Zoom sessions, but
yeah, could
anyway, yeah. Well, let's go on to the next section.
This is Marion. I have a request to slow down, whoever the reader is, to slow down a little bit, because those of us who are not so intellectual and more emotional, it's a little hard to take in when it goes fast.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, here, how about Ralph Jackson?
To read, Jeff?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Location of the heart.
Okay. Let's see if we can hit Marion's bullseye here. Location of the heart. It is from the heart that all good and all evil come. Jesus spoke about the evils that come from the heart and about the pure in heart. In 1954 in India, one of the Western men who were Meher Baba's
Guests.
pests,
I don't know where it got that. but guests.
who
Sound like
were,
it's pestering,
we'll
though.
take it and go. We'll see how that goes down after we go in a few more words. And one of the Western men, I may have read something else wrong.
No, you're okay. Keep going.
In 1954 in India, one of the Western men who were Meher Baba's
Guests.
right asked Baba to speak a bit about what Jesus meant when he said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." So one afternoon, Baba gave us a wonderful discourse on purifying the heart. Baba explained that the heart is where it is located and its connection with the thinking function of our minds. Here are Baba's words as I recorded them in my notepad at the time. Mind has dual functions. The impressions that lie dormant have to be worked out so they appear as thought. This thinking function of mind is known as Vedantis, is known by Vedantis as man, pronounced M-U-N, man. The second function of the mind is of feelings, of emotion. This is called antakarana, antakarana. That means the heart. So what is known as heart is actually the second function of the mind itself. The impressions that are called sanskaras are spent both through the thinking and feeling. To the first functioning of mind, God just first functioning of mind belong just thoughts. So I'm sorry, the impressions that are called sanskars are spent both through thinking and feeling. To the first functioning of mind belong just thoughts, any kind of thoughts. To the second functioning of mind, the heart, belong feelings and desires. All feelings of joy, pain, disappointment, happiness, shock, etc. belong to this antakarana. What happens is, in sound sleep, when you sleep, the impressions lie in a latent, dormant state. Now, what wakes you up from sound sleep? Impressions. They wake you up. Impressions of actions done. And these impressions are spent first by thoughts, then desires, then by actions. So Krishna in his Gita said once, let impressions be spent only through thoughts. Then no new impressions will be formed. If you cannot do this, let impressions be spent through desires. longings, feelings, but not through actions. Then new impressions will be formed, but not so deep. But if impressions are put into action, then new impressions are bound to form. This means that the first function of mind is not important. It is natural. But the second functioning of mind, i.e. heart, is important because it is the seat of desires. And unless the heart, which I have just explained to be the second functioning of the mind, unless the heart is devoid of all desires, all feelings, that means unless the heart is pure and naked, then God, who is your innermost self, cannot reveal himself. The heart then is the feeling level of our mind. And both the thought and the feeling levels of our consciousness are parts of our mind. The mind that exists even when we are not incarnate. Our sanskaras lying dormant in the subconscious as unexpressed tendencies assert themselves first as thoughts, then, if not checked, as feelings in the heart, and then, if not checked, eventually as actions. Baba explained that we are goaded by sanskaras of all kinds, and he emphasized the difference between thinking about something and doing it physically, and about the difference in the resultant sanskaras. Baba said not to worry about feelings and thoughts of taking desires. They do bring about sanskaras, but these will be minimal compared with the expression at the physical level. Therefore, when we are besieged by desires or strong emotions, we should curtail them at the inner level of feelings without giving them physical expression. But if we do express them physically, we are doing the worst thing we could do, because we are only sowing the seeds for more sanskaras of a like nature.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. Anything to say to that dynamic? There, Baba kind of gives a little bit of the internal dynamic of sanskars and thought and feeling and action.
Well, the first thing that comes to my consciousness about what Darwin is saying here is about 2 weeks ago or so, I was feeling sort of peaceful, and I suddenly had a thought that I should do something, this thing I wanted, whatever it was. And what amazed me was it's almost like watching my mind doing its own thing. I mean, I didn't try to have a thought. And so it goes back to, for me, this thing of upapag, which means my mind always wants to be busy. My mind doesn't want to slow down. My mind doesn't care if I have peace or not. So, but what I don't quite get in all of this is how the feelings drive the thoughts, because I suspect that the energy for the thoughts are in the sanskaras, are in the feelings. So the feeling part, how do you work with the feeling part? Because if you get the feeling part, you already got the thought. So the thought must have energy coming from the feelings. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyone want to speak to that? That's a very good question. The relationship between feelings, desires, emotions on the one hand, and thoughts.
Well, what if I could, I mean, what pops into my head immediately is years ago quitting smoking. And when I was going through that process, I found that the thought to smoke a cigarette and the desire to do so were both just like this together, just instantaneously. But the farther I got away from that habit, the more I could see the difference, until finally the thought to have a cigarette would enter my head. But then it would take a little while for the desire to do that manifested as a feeling. And finally, after having quit for quite some time, I might have the thought about smoking a cigarette, but there were no longer any feelings attached to it. It was gone. So, I mean, that really kind of clarified it for me.
Yeah, great example. And anyone else to speak to that?
Actually, Marcia had her hand raised.
I was back to I raised my hand because of the prior statement about not taking your thoughts into actions. Because a while back, I was thinking about how I'd like to stay here and get a house. And then I heard a house for sale. And I'm 76, do I really need a house? You know, I need to act on it. So I was saying, boy, I wished I would have read this passage because I didn't have my Effort and Grace book. And so I kind of contacted a realtor, and I really don't know if I need a house, but I guess I knew that it will bring more involvement because it's much better not to own things like that. But I've never had a house, and all of a sudden I said, oh, I need a house because I'm 76 and going back and forth to Myrtle Beach and moving in out of the center, and where I'm staying is killing my body. So, and then before I did it, I asked Baba, should I do this, yes or no? And he didn't stop me, so I don't know if it's a mistake or not, you know, but I've been careful not to involve realtors, but I just decided, well, I should look at this house so that I can see if it's something I really want or need before I pursue any of it. So I think I'm okay, but when it hit me, I said, I know you're supposed to think about your thoughts as clouds passing by and not attached, but this really got me, you know, because it's in a good neighborhood and, you know, it would be really nice, quite expensive, which I really don't need, you know, but so I don't know. It's like you have to watch the mind, you know. It really does. Maya grabs you and wants to take you somewhere else, but I'm not going to be upset about it, attached to being upset about it. You know, I have to let that go. So that's the thing, not attached to the things you do wrong and to detach from that. And I feel like everything that happens are little vignettes of what we're working on that are coming up, you know, like desires and wants and needs and you know, but the most important thing is just loving God and trusting Him and having faith. So anyway, I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, that's the very type of thing we're talking about.
Cindy?
I'll share. When something that came up for me reading that passage was, I mean, this is my ego putting up a fuss. Well, then I'm just some lobotomized automaton that has no feelings, and I have nothing. If I have no feelings or desires in my heart, then like, what am I? Am I human? And I remembered a lot of times, Jeff, when you've done like a litany of the pure, like feelings that come from the true heart, like from love, like love. I'm like, oh, that's what is left then. The ability of the pure love to manifest and flow through me. Or at least that's what I thought when I was like thinking like, oh, I'm just like, you know, it's the purity of the flow of love then.
Yeah, I mean, like if love inspires an action, you're not bound in the same way as if desire or some negative, especially a negative feeling or emotion inspires the action. So that this is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's not brought up here, but when things come from love, they aren't binding. So we have things that we can think. We can think with love and it's not binding, but when we think with desire, it can we can get bound up in it. We can feel with with love, and that's not binding, but if we feel with you know, a selfishness and wanting and everything, then we get trapped, caught up. Anything else? I wonder, you know, usually Shri has some interesting things to say. I'm just throwing that out. You don't have to say anything. But
I've just been listening a lot tonight.
yeah,
But if I do think of, I don't want to share just to share, but if I do think
Yeah.
of something, I will.
yeah, feel free. Yeah. Yeah, it's this dynamic. I mean, I'm just saying in my own self, like I don't have so much. I used to have problems with thought, a ticker tape of thoughts going by, but then I kind of from the Mongoli, I learned, well, what is feeding those thoughts? You know, you can, to counteract thoughts by other thoughts is one level, but I found that it's my feelings and emotions that are feeding the thoughts. So if I can just bring my awareness down and follow the feelings in their raw form, I can then the mind itself, the thoughts kind of slow down because my awareness is down tracking my feelings and my emotions or maybe my desires. And so that's one way of getting out of the confinement of thinking all the time. But then now you have to deal with these emotions running through you. That's another whole realm to get detached from. But early on, Erich, when I was a young kid, he really encouraged me to. Most people, their base of operations is up in their head. They're looking at the world from here. And Erich really encouraged me to bring the base of operations down to the heart level, and then to feel my way through life rather than thinking my way through life. Up here in the mind are good and bad, right and wrong, virtue and vice, and all the standards of love and, you know, all the gradations of love. But down here, at the heart level is a better way to respond to life, especially if you are working from your better angels. And there isn't so much thinking. The thinking doesn't, if you have a loving impulse, the thinking can be a good servant, but it's no longer the master. But for most people, thoughts and their beliefs, their opinions, their theories are, you know, are really directing their life. When at a heart level, especially the deeper level, is a better way to navigate our boat through the choppy waters of the world. But there is a difference, you know. I mean, I remember Fred Winterfeld. Well, I'll say Robert Dreyfus went to see Baba in 1965. He was just 25 at the time, and when he came back, they stopped him in New York on his way to California to ask him to share. The Monday night group asked him to share his experience of Baba. And these were mainly older people, and he got up there in front of the old little Carnegie Hall recital hall that was there, and they asked him, well, what it was like to meet Baba. He said, I went from here to here, and that was the end of his talk. They couldn't get anything more out of him, but they couldn't get anything. That was it. And I know that Fred Winterfeld, who was an old one of Baba's old mandalis said that to get from here to here takes lifetimes to get that base of operations at the heart level. Anyway.
Ron?
Yeah, can I offer up something here? I was listening to a fellow being interviewed who is a Qigong teacher. He had met many Qigong masters throughout the world and written books about them and about Qigong and all this kind of thing. And the interviewer asked them about enlightenment. Could it possibly lead to enlightenment by doing these Qigong teachings and so the question was, how do you know if you've reached enlightenment? That was the question. And his answer that he had heard from somebody else was the one that he thought was right. And I'm inclined to think it's a very good answer, which is you stop worrying. Once you stop worrying, then that is a type of enlightenment. And worrying is a troubled state of mind. So once it stops causing trouble, I think you're in good hands.
Yeah, and when worry kind of subsides, you're less apt to be dragged into the future. You stay a little bit more in the present.
Exactly.
You're not worrying that is when you're completely in the present, I would say you're enlightened. You know, if you can, where you're not kind of pulled energetically into the past or the future. Yeah. Okay, let's go on.
I was going to add the wonderful thing about being fully present, which, like you said, Jeff, is the seventh plane, state of absolute presence, where even thoughts of the past or future are just seen as little clouds. Eckhart Tolle was talking about this, how to him now at this stage, thoughts are just little tiny clouds. They don't pull you in like they do for a person who's still in Maya. The beautiful thing is when you're in that state of presence, you can worry because number one, you know that ultimately nothing is real. And number two, even if you're operating on the level of form, you can craft your future meaningfully rather than let external circumstances moving you. And I think crafting reality is something that a lot of spiritual traditions don't talk about, but I think it's very important because we are all made in the image of God. We are all creators in a sense.
Yeah, beautiful. And you can plan your future by in the present. So you don't even have to leave the present to plan your future, oddly enough. I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, if you're worried about the future, then you're energetically in the future and you've left a portion of the present, you know. So let's go. I wonder, Tony Paternetti might be there, but he's always has very interesting things to say, but I don't know if he's just fallen asleep on the sofa in New York there or not, you know. Oh, we missed him. Okay, let's go on to the next section. Opening the heart center. Sabine, are you able to see this okay there from Germany?
Yeah, I'm fine. I also have my booklet here, so I can read.
Yeah.
Opening the Heart Center. Meher Baba has said that the book he will give us to read is the book of the heart, which holds the key to the mystery of life. That is how important the heart is. So much of our work needs to be centered on freeing the heart from sanskaric impulses. We do this work through what I call the heart center, which is a feeling center connected to our subjective subconscious level as opposed to the reasoning function of the intellect. It is through the heart center faculty that we can become aware of the spirit level of our being. Baba especially emphasized the importance of keeping the heart center open. This is where the spiritual path begins in a conscious way, because it is through the heart that we become conscious of sanskaras at the level of feelings and desires. And it is at this level that we can experience the fullness of divine love, beauty, freedom, and bliss, coupled with self-effacement, which is the letting go of the idea of a separate self. Baba says the ego is the affirmation of being separate from the other, while love is the affirmation of being one with the other. Hence, the ego can be dissolved only through real love. So we must learn how to keep the flow of love in our consciousness uncontaminated by the I. This involves purifying the heart and keeping love flowing through the heart center. As love flows through the purified heart, we radiate the divine qualities of truth, love, beauty, and purity itself. This is our goal. Letting love flow instead of thinking of selfish things helps to remove veils in our consciousness by dissolving the selfishness which is based on misconceptions and what Baba calls ignorance of the truth. It is not a matter of arbitrarily forcing the mind or the feelings along certain lines, but entails becoming subtle enough to be aware of how our selfish thoughts are formed from desires, where those desires come from, and what all of that leads to. As we work inwardly, we notice that our consciousness settles more at the subjective level, and our responses to the world flow from that level. Our values are more clearly defined. We see what sanskaric impulse is coming through and can make intelligent choices as to how to counteract it. Our real work then is not developing some intellectual practice leading to special knowledge, but learning how to keep the heart center open, which means rising above the level of sanskaric impulses and letting love flow freely.
Beautiful. And that's done at 5 a.m. too, folks.
It is.
Okay. Anyone to say something to that?
Well, I've been enjoying this entire passage because it resonates so clearly with most of the things that Ramana Maharshi wrote. And to see two liberated beings, Meher Baba and Ramana Maharshi, speaking about the heart center and the role of the heart center in the deeper reality is just really nice, because you have two people who are not people per se, but two beings, two souls who have realized their oneness with the oversoul and have been able to transmit it to others, saying the same thing. All of Ramana Maharshi's disciples, whether you're looking at Lakshmana Swami or Papaji or any of the others who became liberated through his grace, all mentioned that during the final moment of ego death, the ego died in the heart center. So it just reaffirms this importance of the heart being sort of the place where everything arises from. And the Ramana lineage says that in deep sleep every night, the mind goes from the brainstem to the heart and rests there, and subconsciously, or how would I say it, unconsciously unites with God. So we're all experiencing the seventh plane in sort of an unconscious way when we're asleep. And it's so important, because if you don't do that, doesn't matter what else is going on in your life, you're going to crash and get deep sleep. That's how important it is to redraw and get rejuvenated from our connection to source. So I just really enjoy the fact that both of these great teachers are drawing on the same theme.
Yeah, yeah, the inner dynamics, to kind of get a sense of the inner dynamics. I mean, the heart, though, see, at the beginning of the one discourse or section, Darwin talks about from Jesus that the heart is the source of all good and all evil. In other words, the ego can use the heart as a vehicle as well as love. I mean, the heart is the greatest thing for as a vehicle for love, but it can also be a vehicle for the ego and all of its negative qualities. So the Sufis call the level of the spirit, which is beyond space and time, as the heart of hearts, you might say, the soul itself. And if love can flow through that from there through the heart, that's the best. And the beautiful thing, when love flows through us, it is dissolving impressions right and left. You know, everything is getting dissolved and eroded away. But like I say, you have to be careful because sometimes a lot of impulses come through that even good impulses are not necessarily love. They're part of the samskaric makeup. Even though good is better than bad, it still doesn't have the spontaneity and purity of love coming through the heart. Yeah.
I was just curious to ask everyone this, drawing on a point that Jeff just made. In terms of visualizing this process, sometimes when you're connected with the deeper self in the heart, sometimes I visualize it as a stream of water dissolving away sediment. Other times I visualize it as a fire burning up everything in its midst, all the sanskars. I'm just curious if you guys have had more experience with one or either of those inner
neither.
symbols.
Or neither.
Or neither, yeah, or neither.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's put that out there before we get to Rich. How do you experience that process when love is coming through? You experience it as a dissolving sort of process, or a fire burning up some scars, burning obstacles to the force?
Rich.
Yeah, Rich.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm going to back up just a little bit. It follows the same thing, but I'm kind of backing up. I think I've noticed about me that intellectually, with my intellect, with my thoughts, so to speak, I've tried to evaluate the world and people and situations. I don't know if it's just defensive, but as to what benefit I can make of it, or what I think the best value of that stuff is. So you don't want a junky car when you need a reliable car, but you can take that to extremes when you talk to people and you measure them by some standard of, I like that, I value that. And that's hard for me to get past. I think I'm just beginning to move past that towards more of the open-hearted stuff, I think.
Yeah, in other words, you have a whole system of values up here in the head, and then you're evaluating people based on these things through that lens, rather than, like I say, just go ahead and loving them good or bad, or whatever, whoever they are. Right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, there's that line where Baba says, don't waste your precious time in differentiating and judging your fellow beings. You know, I remember that line.
Right on.
Really hit me. Okay.
Sam or she.
I talk about how you feel about love, like coming across somebody that you've seen for a long time and you hug. You just feel good, you know, that's love. It just flows through each other. It's a natural thing, you know. And the hardest part, though, is feeling love for people that maybe pick up bad vibes from, you know. And that's what the key is to love them too, and figure that the things that about them that irritate you are probably things in yourself, you know, that irritate yourself about yourself. But anyway, I opened up this book I got a couple days ago called Mayor Baba Calling, page 53. It says, empty your heart of strangers. If you are convinced of God's existence, then it rests with you to seek him, to see him, and to realize him. Do not search for that outside of you, it can only be found within you, for his only abode is the heart. But you have filled his abode with millions of strangers, and he cannot enter, for he is shy of strangers. Unless you empty his abode of these strangers, you will never find God. These strangers are your age-old desires, your millions of wants. Honesty in your dealings with others will help clear the strangers out of your heart. Then you will find him, see him, and realize him. The ego mind must meet actual death if God is to be seen and realized. Yeah, this book has this is a great book. It's like, it's just got like one little pagers. It's like, oh my God, what a book. It's like, okay.
Yeah, an excellent quote. Yeah. Let's go on to maybe Shri, is that you? Are you on deck here?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I kind of view it as like an enveloping almost in a way. Kind of I don't know if this is the best way to describe it, but like kind of like how a white blood cell completely like engulfs whatever disease is in your body, and then that disease, it's not that it like goes away per se, but it's just a part of like it's still, it's dead, but it's still inside you. I didn't study science in college, so don't quote me on that. But in a way, like if you were to go out into the ocean and kind of just get swept away into the ocean, you don't go away per se, but you just become one part of this like larger entity, and that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
Don't you look at death in the same way? It's like you're just in a different space, like when people lose people, like I used to feel bad. Of course, you feel bad for the people that have the loss, but the people that go, they're just absorbed back into the ocean like the drop bubbles, so we're all like these drop bubbles. We pop out, get reborn gazillions of times till we get it right, but then we're really all the same. So it's kind of like it's all illusion anyway. So I stopped trying to figure it all out and just go minute by minute and always expect the unexpected and let go of stuff, because that's Maya grabbing you if you keep holding. Yeah, we're human. That's why we're here. That's why we make mistakes, because we want to pack our suitcase like I've heard here before for your next life. You don't want to take all the baggage left over from this life. So while we're on the earth this time, Baba's given us a special time to look at ourselves and to clear our house, so we can all go back to the garden and be happy, like, okay.
Yeah. Let's go on to
Janet.
Yeah, I've been thinking about what Sam said about his images of the fire or the water, and I think for me, I'm more of a kinesthetically oriented person, and I mean, like I have something going on in the present moment actually, and I'm about someone who I care about. And really, I sometimes I feel the flow of love through my heart, and I feel it extending in, Baba tentacles toward that person. And then other times something will happen and I'll shift back into worry. And it's sort of as if I sense, I mean, it's almost like a ping pong game at times. It's just back and forth. And and sometimes it holds in one spot more and then holds in another spot. But rather than seeing it anyway, for me, it is an experience. I experience it. I can feel that sense of the influx of love in a way that settles me back into myself and it's just a deeper sense of well-being connected with it. And then when I flip into the worry state in the heart, I can feel all the repercussions in my body of the worry state. So that's my personal.
Yeah, Darwin earlier in one of these chapters talks about being when you're in an expansive state, you can work on a lot of these. I mean, you get like a bonfire going, and then you can start throwing your weaknesses and your shortcomings and hangups in for the time being and burn up some of these things. And then the fire burns down and then you're back to your old self again. But this influx, like Janet says, that influx of love is as we move deeper and deeper into our better angels, that influx of love will happen more frequently, and it'll overshadow, it'll flow through a lot of the obstruction. And that's the the beautiful thing. Over time, it gets better. Anything else, Janet, that you had going to mention there?
No, that I think piggybacking on what you just said, Jeff, I mean, with this particular experience that I'm going through that back and forth with, I mean, when I notice that when I get into kind of a more, I watch something on TV or something that reminds me of something that it can trigger within me the worry feeling. And then I have to consciously go back and invite or tune into, maybe is the better word to say, tune into that deeper sense and almost like holding hands with Baba in a way. Yeah. And then that will come stronger. And then at certain times of the day when I'm more tired, like at night, I have less, it's the old pattern is more apt to surface. I noticed that as well.
Yeah, but gradually, our worries and our desires and our impulses are getting eroded away by all the frequency of this influx of love coming in. It's only a matter of time when we will find ourselves in a lovely place. I look over at Darwin, he was, what a nice state to be in, I mean, he was just flowing out with such warmth. And yeah, eventually that's where we're being led to beautifully. Hey, it's getting late now. Now, I was wondering if, oh, darn it, I saw Elizabeth. Oh, there she is. Elizabeth, was it Violet? I was hoping that she could read one of her poems. Elizabeth?
Hi, no, again, so I'm here and don't have any of my notebooks on hand.
Oh, okay.
I just moved. I can
Oh.
see if I can find something, but I don't know if I could find something promptly enough.
Yeah. Okay. If you find something promptly enough, just break in. We'll make room.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Do we have like a final quote here that, oh, go ahead, Bob.
Well, the last paragraph in the section we just read where Darwin talks about learning how to keep the heart center open really reminded me of this short quote from Baba. Baba says, "The master is the divine beloved. And when the disciple meets his master, all that he has to do is to love him. For if the disciple loves the master out of the fullness of his heart, his final union with him is assured. And this is the important part to me. He need not worry about the quality of his love. He should love in spite of his weaknesses and not tarry until he can purify his own heart. So,
Yeah, excellent quote. Yeah. That whole link, I mean, we have such a great link with Baba that so much of this stuff gets dissolved by just focusing on Baba. And his love does a lot of the work. But I sometimes feel like in my own life, I had to work on a lot of things to be able to actually, Baba says, you know, don't look at the shadows, but turn toward the light. But sometimes I was stuck in the shadows. I had to at least extract myself a little bit from the shadows so I could turn around and actually see the light.
it's so easy to get stuck in that darkness and in those feelings. And it's like, how do I get out of this? What do I do?
Yeah. But it gets better where you learn how to kind of get out of the out of the weeds, out of the stickers, the briars, and be able to turn and then benefit from the direct connection with Baba. Then things start to dissolve right and left. Go ahead, Wood.
I just have had this song going through my head for the last like 5 or 10 minutes, and I think it's by Grassroots. Sooner or later, love is going to get you. Sooner or later, love's going to win. It's just a matter of time until we make up our mind. If I could sing it, I would. But that, I love that song, and I love the hope and the lightness in it. Like sooner or later,
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
yep. And that was one expression that Darwin, he always used to use that, sooner or later, comma. So it's you know, if we can just wait it out, not lose hope, you know, not get discouraged. So Goer, you have a final reading, then we'll have a few moments of silence. And
Yes.
then Sabine and Johannes can go back to bed.
Yeah, actually, I found 2 quotes, Jeff, that speak to what we've been discussing tonight. One is on how we can change our own patterns. And the quote goes, "A new line in the divine picture is sketched only when some individual takes life forcefully in his hands, breaks up the old patterns, and insists on creating something new by his own inner vision."
Read that again. This is this is Baba's own words.
Yeah.
It's so encouraging. Go ahead, read it again.
It just goes to show you how much we can do to better ourselves. So again, it says, "A new line in the divine picture is sketched only when some individual takes life forcefully in his hands, breaks up the old patterns, and insists on creating something new by his own inner vision." And a second quote I have is about desires. We've been talking a lot about desires tonight. Baba says, "Unless you give up the breath of your desire and die to yourself, you cannot make me the breath of your, I'm so sorry, this is of your pure life and live forever of your," hang on one second, being able to, yeah, I'll read it again.
Yeah.
"Unless you give up the breath of your desire and die to yourself, you cannot make me the breath of your life and live forever." Jai Baba.
Beautiful. Read that one slowly again, and then
Again.
we'll have a few moments of silence. That's a
Sorry, I
beautifully
read my own
simply
handwriting.
expressed.
"Unless you give up the breath of your desire and die to yourself, you cannot make me the breath of your life and live forever." Jai Baba.
Hey, Bob. Yeah.
Jeff, Elizabeth has some poem.
Oh, good.
Elizabeth.
Thank you. I found something small that I had sent to Angela through an email. So this is just a small poem. You crash into me like oceans, knocking me off my feet in a different way than anyone than she does. I gave me away inside of this moment. There's an archaic amalgamation of you gathering in my epicenter, shaking, for you are beauty's bottom line, and these tremors bringing all my buildings to the ground, teaching me to dance in the rubble of my maybes and somedays and what ifs, and turning my fears into your artistry, into tapestries. There are nothing but stories on my walls, telling me to love harder, that you will cultivate my heart that is your heart inside all these hearts around me. And oftentimes, a look, a fear, a wind, nature's, this love for you inside me is a way that howls, and I find myself sitting in longing, making strange comparisons like, I want to chain smoke you, my lord, because all my senses are singing your songs, and all the oxygen in my systems is in paltry comparison to what your holy breath brings to the table, offering me things that words have no business trying to make sense of.
Beautiful. You have to read that again. That is wonderful, magnificent. Yeah, if you please read it again. The imagery is fantastic. Whoop. Oh. Oh, now we can't hear you though.
We lost her.
She's muted. She's muted.
Elizabeth, you're muted.
Oh, I said it's hard to read because it's in my own handwriting, so it's a little hard to to differentiate, but I'll try again.
You need a scribe.
You crash into me like life's oceans, knocking me off my feet in a different way than she does. It gives me away inside this moment. There's an archaic amalgamation of you gathering in my epicenter, shaking, for you are the beauty's bottom line, and these tremors bring all my buildings to the ground, teaching me to dance in the rubble of my maybes and somedays, turning my fears into your artistry, into tapestries that are nothing but stories on my walls, telling me to love harder. I will cultivate my heart that is your heart inside all these hearts around me. And oftentimes a look, a fear, nature's, this love for you inside me in a way that howls. I find myself sitting and longing, making strange comparisons to love. I want to chain smoke you, Lord, because all my senses sing your songs, and all the oxygens in my systems is a paltry in comparison to what your holy breath brings to the table, offering me things that words have no business trying to make sense of.
Wow. Well, really. Anyway, let's have a few moments of silence. That's lovely. Jay Baba. All of her buildings collapsed there. And she started dancing in the rubble.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
The chain smoking of God, that's a different, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Anyway, wonderful to see all of you next week. We'll have like a late night show, an actual topic. I'm working on the possibility of empathy and suffering. The place that how suffering ties in with our empathy. kind of the value of suffering, that this thing that we prefer to avoid and not have in our lives.
Hmm.
You know, so I don't know. I'm going to try to write it up and see if we can evoke some thinking about it and sharing. Yeah. Nita, nice to see. She's there in Mumbai. We got two people from Mumbai here.
Ooh.
Nita and Dinku there. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, wonderful to see all you and
If I have a little bit of a question, in these meetings, I know I've always heard that when there's a gathering of 3 or more, that Baba is present. And I was thinking about this week, and I don't know, these meetings, there's no question that Baba is working through all of us.
yeah. I mean, Baba said, Mansari told me one time that Baba had told her that if I have one lover in a city, that city is protected. Now, we may just be, you know, making dinner or something like that, or out in the rose garden and everything. But at any moment, Baba can just elbow us out of the way and do whatever he has to do as a vehicle, you know. And so, I mean, we don't want that to go to our head. I mean, the more it goes to our head, the less of a vehicle we will be. But still, is Baba affirming that you know, that he values our surrender, our availability to him.
I have a question. How many of you have been driving around in your car in circles, and finally I realize when I'm driving around that I must be driving around doing some business for Baba, because I have no idea what happens. It's like, wow, we must be doing work all the time. Yeah, I think, but I don't know what.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it can be at a level we don't even know, and it doesn't matter. Sometime I'll tell you the story of something about the women modeling, being a part of a higher work, even though they weren't aware of it. But anyway, that's stay for another time. But anyway, I'll see all of you.
Okay, bye.
Have a Marion and all, you know, that you that have to work.
Guten Nacht.
Guten Nacht. Yeah. Auf Wiedersehen. Yeah.
Sweet dreams.
Yeah.